While everyone talks about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, another dynasty has ruled from the shadows, with a fortune that eclipses every billionaire family you've ever heard of. But how can a $7.9 trillion power remain invisible for 400 years? Stay with me until the end, because that's when I'll reveal the one secret that still explains their power today. Chapter 1. The $7.9 trillion birth of an empire. Amsterdam in the 1600s. No castles, no royal parades. Instead, account books, contracts, quiet offices. Here, the House of Orange learned an important lesson. Power doesn't need to be loud. It grows in silence, when money works. They didn't conquer with armies, but with papers. With a state license, called a charter, they built a machine. And that machine would become the most valuable in history. The machine had a name, the Dutch East India Company, the VOC. Adjusted today's money, it was worth nearly $7.9 trillion, more than Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Saudi Aramco combined. Hard to believe, until you see how the system was built. The VOC was designed to have no rivals. Picture a trade route like a highway, and only one merchant is allowed to use it. No competition, no price wars. Every profit flows one way. That's what a monopoly looks like. The charter, the royal license, made it even stronger. It was like a giant no-entry sign to everyone else. Only the VOC could trade here. Any rival who tried was pushed out, sometimes by force. And with every voyage, the gap widened. Profits piled up, while the risks seemed smaller than they really were. It wasn't just a company anymore. It acted like a state in disguise, a corporate sovereign that signed treaties, built forts, and raised armies. Real state power, relocated from the palace into a boardroom. And soon, figures from the House of Orange would realize that this silent empire could serve as their stage. Men like Maurice, who had once defended the Republic with cannons, but would soon discover that contracts could be even more powerful than gunpowder. Chapter 2. The Birth of Wall Street. Then came the true financial innovation. The Dutch built the first real stock exchange in the world. It resembled a marketplace, yet instead of bread or cloth, it was ownership itself that was traded. No longer did anyone need to buy an entire ship. A small slice, a share, could be secured. And that share gave a stake in the empire. It was a breakthrough watched closely by leaders of the House of Orange. Men like Maurice of Orange, who had already defended the young republic on the battlefield and now saw finance as the new weapon of survival. Maurice understood cannons could win a battle, but only contracts could win the future. Shares and rules could secure victories that gunpowder never could. For the first time in history, a company could sell its shares to the public, the first initial public offering, or IPO, an open invitation, become part of our empire. Money flowed in faster than ever before. But the real revolution was invisible. A shield crafted in law, limited liability. If a ship sank, if war destroyed a warehouse, the investor no longer lost everything. The maximum loss was only the money placed in. The house stayed safe, the farm stayed safe, the family's future stayed safe. One rule turned fear into appetite. Suddenly, everyone wanted to invest. Shares changed hands constantly. Money flowed faster than it ever had before. Amsterdam had turned capital into a river. Even Maurice of Orange, once a general of armies, now became a general of finance. He understood that this invisible shield could expand a dynasty's reach far beyond the battlefield. And behind that river stood a dynasty. The House of Orange financed, protected, and steered the system, not with speeches, not with armies, but with shares. Equity. That's ownership sliced into small pieces. Many could hold a piece, but control remained concentrated in the boardroom. That is the paradox of capitalism. Power looks spread out, but in reality, it condenses in the background. For a dynasty, that was perfect. They didn't rule the streets, they ruled the rules. Maurice's successors kept this system alive. Princes like William IV and William V of Orange were not only political figures, but also directly tied to the machinery of trade through their connections to the VOC and the West India Company. Where Maurice of Orange had laid the foundation, William IV and William V carried the model forward, ensuring that the Orange dynasty's name stayed linked to the flow of global capital. Decades later, William IV and William V would take formal roles connected to both the VOC and the West India Company, tying the dynasty's name directly to the machinery of global trade. In truth, the House of Orange thought like the first modern family office. A family office is like a private command center. It manages investments, trusts, taxes, and succession, so nothing leaks away. The Orange dynasty didn't gamble on single voyages. They built a system that paid them no matter who sailed. And that mindset, structure over ships, rules over battles, made their power invisible but permanent. And soon, that same system was ready to travel. What began in Amsterdam wasn't meant to stay there. It needed a bigger stage. It was searching for a bigger stage, and it found one across the channel. A prince would carry Amsterdam's rules across the water. Chapter 3. From Amsterdam to London and beyond. The Dutch had created the rules of modern money, but how long could such a machine stay inside a small republic? Not long. Systems like this always search for a bigger stage. Picture England in 1688. King James II had lost Parliament's trust. Tensions filled the streets. The kingdom needed stability, and fast. That's when William of Orange crossed the channel. On the surface, William of Orange came with soldiers, but his true weapon wasn't an army. It was the Dutch financial system. At his side stood Mary, James's Protestant daughter and William's wife. Together, William and Mary would become the rare example of a joint monarchy, ruling England side by side. For the House of Orange, this wasn't just marriage, it was strategy. A dynasty securing both legitimacy and financial power at the same time. The Glorious Revolution wasn't just a political coup, it was a financial transplant. William of Orange carried the Dutch playbook: government bonds, stock trading, public credit. Soon after, the Bank of England was founded under William and Mary's reign. For the first time, a state could borrow like a corporation, with fixed rules and dates. Debt itself became a product you could buy and sell. This changed everything. Empires no longer had to beg for taxes. They could tap markets directly, just as the VOC once had. Behind the throne, William of Orange's advisors and allies, men like Bishop Gilbert Burnet and powerful Dutch merchants, worked under his direction to translate Amsterdam's practices into English law. These weren't nameless courtiers, but the architects of a new financial order, operating in the shadow of William and Mary's rule. From London, William of Orange and Mary's financial system spread again. Across the Atlantic, Dutch ships had already planted their flag on Manhattan, calling it New Amsterdam. Later, the English renamed it New York, but they kept the Dutch system alive: contracts, credit habits, stock trading. When Wall Street was born, it wasn't starting from zero. It was upgrading a blueprint that had already been drawn in Amsterdam and carried across the channel by William of Orange and reinforced under Mary's reign. America didn't invent capitalism. It scaled the system William of Orange had carried to England. Chapter 4. The Hidden Costs and Human Engine of Empire. The VOC looked immortal, but no empire escapes gravity. Costs piled up: fortresses, fleets, soldier, pay, bribes, politics. Even as the VOC strained under these costs, the House of Orange remained in the background, watching the fortunes of their silent empire rise and fall. That's what's called negative carry, when an asset costs more to keep than it earns month after month. Picture a vacation house that always needs repairs but never earns rent. The longer you hold it, the deeper it drags you into the sand. Negative carry is financial quicksand. The more you fight it, the deeper you sink. The company collapsed, but the dynasty didn't. Because the House of Orange didn't marry an asset, they married a system. They owned rights, rules, and institutions. When one company failed, the system kept paying. That's how families that control the world think. Own the road, not the cart. And the system still pays today. Look at the numbers. Dutch outward investments exceed $5.2 trillion. Quiet capital still flows into energy, finance, infrastructure, everywhere. The House of Orange, centuries later, still holds discrete long-term stakes protected by legal frameworks. This is where trusts and holding companies come in. A family trust is like a vault. You place assets inside, lock them with rules, and they can't leak out through divorces, lawsuits, or reckless heirs. A holding company is like an umbrella. It holds the businesses underneath, banks, energy, real estate, so control stays concentrated even as the family tree expands. That's how power avoids dilution. That's how old money outlives every headline. But behind these quiet flows of capital stood something more tangible: people. The VOC was not just numbers on paper, it was a mega-corporation of flesh and blood, powered by more than 1 million employees who sailed, worked, and often died for the empire. Over 1 million men and women left the Netherlands between the 17th and 18th centuries to serve the company. They were not adventurers chasing dreams. They were employees of a mega-corporation. Sailors, clerks, soldiers, craftsmen, all kept the wheels of the empire turning. The VOC's ships were floating factories. They carried not just goods back to Europe, but also the Dutch system into distant lands. And at the heart of it all stood a city, Batavia, today Jakarta. Batavia was more than a port. It was the nerve center of Asian trade. Jan Pieter's own Koen, the brutal governor-general of the East Indies, ruled from here with an iron hand. Koen's policies enriched Amsterdam and reassured the House of Orange, but they cost tens of thousands of lives. For 3 centuries, Dutch governors directed the fate of entire regions from this city. Contracts were signed, fortunes were stored, but blood was also spilled. Because where markets ruled, violence often followed. The VOC defended its monopolies with cannons. Resistance was crushed, sometimes brutally. The Banda Islands massacre in 1621, ordered directly by Koen, wiped out nearly the entire indigenous population. Survivors were enslaved or forced into labor on spice plantations. Later, in 1740, the Batavia massacre saw thousands of Chinese civilians killed in the streets of Jakarta. So behind the profits stood not just clever contracts, but millions of human lives. This was the hidden side of the Golden Age, an empire invented on paper, carried by people, and defended with violence. And even after the ships were gone, the paperwork survived and kept running the world's money. Empires fall, but names like Koen and dynasties like the House of Orange show how power survives. Paperwork compounds in silence. Chapter 5. The Invisible Operating System of Money. The blueprint that built the VOC still runs modern markets. It was once the design of the House of Orange, and its rules still echo today. Charters turned into corporate law. Monopoly rights became regulatory walls. Permanent shares evolved into index funds. Limited liability is now so ordinary that most forget it was a choice, not a law of nature. Every time a pension fund buys Shell or ING, the orange blueprint moves money. Every time a government issues bonds and the market prices them within minutes, Amsterdam's old exchange whispers in the background. Every time Wall Street clears a trade in microseconds, you are walking inside a system that began with parchment and seals. Put simply, the Dutch turned rules into profit and profit into power. Dynasties, like the House of Orange, mastered this art, turning paper into permanence. And here is the secret. It was never a hidden vault of gold. It was a paper deal, a crown charter compact, laws that protected investors, shares that created a market, limited liability that gave people courage to risk money. And above it all sat the House of Orange, quiet, patient, using the system as their throne. Even centuries later, names replaced crowns, but the dynasty remained. The House of Orange still exists today, embodied in King William Alexander and Queen Maxima. They are widely reported to be connected to this architecture through trusts and investment vehicles, with historical ties to firms like Shell and ING. In this way, the Orange monarchy of the 21st century still sits inside the operating system it once helped create. They did not need to own every company. They owned the operating system. That is how a $7.9 trillion power stays invisible. It does not live in palaces or castles. It lives in rules. Rules the House of Orange helped design, and rules everyone else must follow. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.